And welcome back to Morning Cafe. Next segment, we're here to ensure that you are enlightened. Like I said, we promised you it's going to be full of matters, entertainment in the house, full of matters, informing you on what is happening on matters news, and importantly, enlightening you. So it's that segment where we delve deep into understanding the plastic world and how best we can work towards ensuring that we take care of our environment. Joining me this morning is Karin Boomsma, a Director Sustainable Inclusive Business, so that she can take us through how best we are prepared and how best we can deal with matters ban of plastics in the country, and also as the global fraternity struggles towards ensuring that indeed plastics are going to be a game of the past. Are we able to realize a world without plastics is the question that we'll be asking this morning. So feel free to interact with us, hashtag TV47 Morning Cafe, and of course the Twitter handle is at TV47 at Linda_Alela. Moving on now, let's introduce our guest. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good.
Thank you so much for finding time.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here because it's quite a big topic we're talking about today.
Indeed. And of course, before we delve deep into it, what about the sustainable inclusive business right in Kenya?
Yes, we are an organization under the Kenyan Private Sector Alliance, supported also by the Dutch government, to really support businesses and raise awareness around how can you run your business in a very sustainable way, so that we are doing good for people and for the planet. So that's what we are doing, and part of it is that we would like to see a shift to a circular economy. We're currently having a take, make and waste economy. And we would like to see that change because it's not going to last forever like this. And under the circular economy, we can talk about waste and plastics and material use. So that's what we are doing.
All right, and why I consider you a specialist right now that we're discussing matters, plus just the other day, we know very well that there was also another ban that was effected in regards to us doing away with matters plastics in the country. Your organization is actively involved in campaigning for a shift from linear to circular economy. What is your approach, of course, especially on matters recycling as we speak?
Yeah, so we have to, let me explain, because you asked me that as well, what is the difference and why the ban?
Yeah.
We have a ban for the things we don't dispose properly and we have management issues with. So mainly we have a ban on the things we litter most. So we had the plastic bag ban in 2017. The government does that because they say, listen, it's enough. We find those bags everywhere. And we actually, with this item, we can live without it. And we have proven, because it's very successful. It's like saving us 80% of plastic bags in the environment. So that's quite successful. The other ban we had just recently on the 5th of June is on single-use plastics items. Not all of it, because a lot is single-use. You go to the supermarket, you buy some pasta, it's packed in something that you only use once and then you throw it in the bin when you cook your pasta. So there's many single-use plastics, but 10 items we find again in the restricted areas in Kenya, so on the beaches, in the national parks, are, for instance, bottles, they are earbuds, they are straws, balloons, and those items will be banned because apparently, again, we're not able to manage them appropriately. Now, those single-use plastic items are not banned in general in Kenya. So a plastic bottle you can still buy in the shop and go with it in the car and dispose it at home. So that's the difference. And we put a ban, governments tend to put a ban on the things that we really don't seem to care about, and we litter too much, and it is having a really big impact on our environment, but also directly on our health, because we don't see that maybe tomorrow, but we do really ruin the environment and therefore our health. So that's what happens. But now, if you talk about, for instance, the pasta packaging and bottles for milk or those kind of things are very hard to ban, because then you have to have a quick alternative ready.
But before we even delve deep, I mean, just how prepared were we as a people to ensure that we implement some of these bans? Because clearly, in as much as we're saying there's some progress, there's still so much that needs to be done, and it's evident out here.
Yeah. Okay. So how much prepared are we for the plastic bag ban? I think in the end that was the first ban, so we were not so prepared, and people were panicking. But then they discovered that you can go with your basket, so it's not the biggest deal of the world. I think like the butcheries and people who had to package those kind of things in plastic bags that were also considered plastic bags, carrier bags, they had a bigger issue because they suddenly had to change to different type of materials. But so we were not so prepared, but it was not that bad because you can live without it again. I think we were much more prepared for the single-use plastic ban in the restricted areas. However, that is mostly affecting the tourist industry and the travel industry. And yeah, currently they are not having much business. So yes, they have to adapt, and they will ask tourists, bring your own refillable water bottle, etc. But they won't heavily invest in it at the moment, not in great alternatives, not in too much. If they have to invest in it, they don't have the money. So in that sense, we were not so prepared, but I think we can manage as well. It's only in restricted areas.
Of course, the active campaigns that have been ongoing towards moving from linear circulation of economy and, of course, to circular economy. I mean, when you look at this, it's clearly because we are trying to find ways of ensuring that we implement this successfully and in totality. So what has your approach been as, of course, a sustainable, inclusive business?
Yeah, what you have to consider is actually as a business, but also people, we're living in a dynamic world. Things are changing and we need to adapt. And how much we can adapt will guarantee how much we are successful and survive, basically. And that's also for businesses. So what we try to make sure is like if you deplete your resources, there's no business. There's no business model. You need resources. So what we want to really instill in people is rethink what and how we're using materials. For what are we using plastics? How are we using it? What's the quality of it? Why do we use it once? So really consider, we're very irresponsible towards our behavior towards materials because we just don't think about why we use it. We just find it very normal. But plastics are only around for 60 years. So this is the norm for the last 60 years. Before that, my parents grew up without plastic. So we really like to think, push people and businesses to what kind of materials are you using for what purpose? And can you keep them in the loop? If you make a bottle for your water, can you collect it, make sure it comes back, or we bring it back because there's a deposit on it, or someone is picking it up? And then, can you convert that bottle again in a bottle? Why are we keep on using new and raw materials for the same purposes? And also the other question is, do we really need those materials for those specific purposes? And once you start rethinking that, you become more clever on your resource use. And then actually it's going to save you costs.
Interestingly, allow me to come in, the government has tried to implement this, bans by inculcating fines, because then they probably realize that it's hard for the people to be able to proceed and do this. So a clear need then that we should have a shift of a change or a shift of mind. For this case, how best can we ensure that we inculcate these values to the people and make them understand that this is not about the fines that have been put on board, but it is technically about the future preservation of the environment?
Yeah. Now, consumers, they can choose every day. They can choose what kind of products they buy and how they're packed and what kind of materials they are. So we have a big choice and we have a big responsibility in that light. On the other hand, we can also be responsible enough to not dispose it irresponsibly, so to not litter. So that's our choice. But I think to really create a mind shift, you have to have an infrastructure ready. We have seen that if companies are saying, okay, let me put up a bin where you can leave my materials, that people tend to put any materials inside. So people who they don't want to litter, but then suddenly there's only for one waste stream, there is an infrastructure ready. So we really need to have a clear infrastructure for all waste streams ready so that people can show responsible behavior. And that you can only achieve when you are bringing in every business and every sector. So this is why, for instance, we are currently working collectively. The government is proposing an EPR, which means an extended producer responsibility. And that actually drives the producers who are producing water or milk or any kind of product and package that. And they say, listen, you have made that choice for that type of material, and you need to make sure it doesn't end up in our environment. So they have a collective system where you pay waste collectors, recyclers to actually recover those materials so they don't end up in the environment. And when you do that, then you have a collective system in place, an infrastructure where also consumers then can rely on and show their best behavior. So it needs to go hand in hand. We need to make people aware that what kind of responsibilities you have as a consumer and what kind of responsibilities do you have as a producer. Right. And we really need to change our approach towards the use of materials.
Okay. Now, one would then ask, as a country, that is Kenya, how far are we towards ensuring that the efforts are well, instigated, especially when it comes to policy regulations and, generally looking at the waste management systems in the country?
Yeah, we have quite a lot of challenges still in Kenya, to be honest, because there is not a proper waste management infrastructure in place. Nairobi just closed 82 illegal dump sites. But if there's no alternative, then it's also a scary concept, because then you will have illegal dumping on other places. But what we do have is a new waste management bill, which is currently at Parliament for approval. And that is a very ambitious bill, if we can execute it. Also, due to the lack of the current infrastructure, the government is really pushing and actually putting a lot of responsibility on the private sector. So they are going to shape, for instance, the EPR. That is a strategy, that's a policy that doesn't have to go to Parliament. It's built on the MK, and that is the environment laws, so they can adapt that. So if we are all agree on that, which probably will be in September, then we have a work frame where we can work with as the industry. But it's very industry driven. Because there is not so much in place yet. On the other hand, it's also an opportunity. We can avoid a lot of mistakes the Western world made. We have less waste. We are wasting less. We have less industrialization. So we can actually skip a few big issues and do it right from the start.
All right. How long has the bill been in Parliament?
Couple of months.
How long has this bill been in Parliament?
It has been there for, I think, a few months. For a few months.
So would you say time-wise that, of course, the government is focused on ensuring that this is implemented? Or maybe there's been a delay?
I hope so. I don't know. I really don't know. And also we have COVID crisis. So there's a lot of focus and shift in thinking, in one way, and a good thing. So we want to maintain the good things out of this crisis, but we also want to recover. And for instance, on plastic, we see an increase in single-use plastic use, like masks and the disposal of masks, and that's actually medical waste, so that's quite tricky. And we see a lot of single-use items just because of hygiene reasons, and people just care for that first and don't think of the implications of waste.
All right, now International Plastic Bag Free Day is what we're celebrating today. It comes at a time, when it's just a month, almost a month, so to speak, since the ban of single-use plastic was brought on board. Just how are businesses adapting to this?
Yeah, businesses, remarkably, because they're going through tough times, they're not letting go. They're actually really working towards solutions. And if you look at the extended producer responsibility, they know the policies and the strategies are coming up. They know the bill is at Parliament, and they're very proactive in actually creating a business model that can work. And so that all their members, for instance, for the Kenyan manufacturers, it really is, we can execute it and we can implement it. So people actually stay quite strong. quite resilient, even in the tourist industry where there is no business. People are not letting go. They might not invest, but they do take it seriously. They want to know. We organized quite a couple of webinars, and we have a crash course. We have trend reports on single-use plastics. So you can go to sustainableinnclusivebusiness.org and you can find all this kind of quick information about what are we talking about, how much waste is there, how can I deal with it, but also what are the alternatives. And you see that a lot of alternatives are on the rise, because also it's actually saving the amount of materials we're using, and that is also positive in terms of cost.
All right, that's amazing. So what are some of the challenges that you are facing in getting the businesses to adapt that, circulatory mode in general?
The biggest mind shift we have to make is that we cannot create a new system with our old values. So what you see, what I mean by that is people say recycling is expensive, but it's not true. It's actually the price of plastic in your product doesn't reflect the true impact on the environment. So if we have a true price on how much it costs to collect it back, to not let it end up in your food, then your current products would be of a much higher price. So that is what we face, that you say, okay, but the alternatives are more expensive. Recycling is more expensive. Using briquettes instead of a tree is more expensive, which is a very, that should not happen. It should not be possible if we have a big issue and you want to tackle it, that you keep on saying that the problem itself is cheaper than offering alternatives. So that's the biggest challenge. We need to create a new system, and you need to all believe in that new system and create new values around it. So not everything might be money driven, but more building a resilient ecosystem where everyone can thrive.
So what more will it take to shift their mind into understanding the importance of this and overlook what they would consider as so of expenses?
It needs to be a hand-in-hand approach. You need to be forced by the government. It needs to be by law, because otherwise people are not moving. You need to feel responsible, so you need to be able to start seeing the impact. And you have to have alternatives that you say, okay, I don't need to litter, I don't need to waste. Oh, I can actually, you need to see the good side of solutions and of a shift in order to do so. But we need to be all convinced that this is not sustainable, and then we can shift.
All right, we are talking about an economic meltdown courtesy of COVID-19, and so much so businesses have been affected. Different sectors across the globe have been affected. Just how has this also affected the efforts that are being put aboard on this?
Yeah, I think the private sector in Kenya is still working very hard to be compliant to the EPR that's coming up.
Yeah.
I think we're trying to still work very hard, and I think in one end, the crisis also forced us to rethink how we are doing things. And we suddenly discovered that I don't have to go to the studio. I can do a Skype and still be having a TV interview. And so it also opens up your mind to say, can I not think innovative about this? And actually, if I shift and use different types of materials, I might be much more in charge of my business. So what you also see is that big companies at the moment are being reprimanded to say, listen, you don't feel responsible. You just place an order with people. When we have a crisis, you terminate it. People don't have any income. So how can you build more sustainable value chains and supply chains and feel responsible for what you're doing? Like, I don't need to pick any random charity. Okay, charity is great, but I can better look at my own impact in my daily life or in my business impact and make that better, because that is in front of me. That's what I am directly responsible for. And I think in a way the crisis has made us rethink a lot of things, what kind of lifestyle we're having, consumerism. We suddenly stop buying anything we don't need, and the economy is collapsing. So that tells you something about the current system, and that allows you to or forces you to think into a new future.
All right. So to realize this dream of a plastic-free world, or talk about the circulatory mode, or even talk about how best we can, adopt recycling of course, commodities or stuff abroad, it is pretty much important that we incorporate innovations. I'd want to know what innovations you have come up with to contribute to a smoother transition and generally to ensure that we get to conserve our environment.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of innovations around recycling, and that's very, very positive. So really innovations that make sure that we can recover materials. And we are actually currently capable, okay, those are quite heavy investments, but we are capable of, for instance, recycling a PET bottle, which is your water bottle, into the same bottle again. And that are great innovations, because then what a lot of the times happens when you talk about recycling is that people pick the materials, they wash them, and then they break them down in small pieces and export them again. And what we really need is innovations that we can apply in our country, so we can keep material cycles in our country, and it actually can create jobs in our current economy. And that's what we need. So in recycling, we actually want to push, have materials here, keep them here, make sure you don't even recycle them to downcycle them. So you're not going to make boiler oil, you're not going to ship them out. You keep them in your country and you try to either upcycle them or make exactly the same products. And those are the very hopeful innovations. And you even see that happening now in textile, that you can bring back materials to fiber and create new textiles out of it. And those are the true close-the-loop solutions, and that's what we are looking for, because a close-the-loop solutions also offers plenty of alternative jobs that you might lose in another business line.
So local efforts are very, very important, and also, locally crafted solutions towards this approach, and successfully winning this battle. I want to consider it as a battle. I mean, what else is being done towards ensuring that indeed the efforts that are being put locally are well gelled into what is being put, in the global aspect, to ensure that indeed we are successful on this?
Yeah, I think Kenya is in terms of bans and statements and laws very ahead. We are actually on the forefront of this battle, as you call it. So that's great, because I think we have a lot of opportunities to make bigger shifts much quicker. It took the Netherlands 15 years to come up with a proper infrastructure for every and each waste stream, and to make sure that every producer paid the right levies to manage that specific waste stream they were responsible for. I think it doesn't have to take that long in Kenya, for instance, so we can set a tone and we can set an example. And I think also we are innovative and we are quite resilient. And you see that even with the COVID, we're very resilient to adapt and to come up with new solutions. So I think we're doing quite okay, and we're following the pace that is set globally, but we have less bigger issues, luckily, still.
All right, that's incredible. So moving forward, what will be your parting shot, especially at this time when there are celebrations across the globe, across the international community, and they're just not labeled the celebrations, but the push in trying to ensure that we are a plastic-free bag, fraternity. We're looking forward to see to it that we're able to achieve this. And in such a scenario, people are going down to look at the strides that have been made so far. Would you say that we are on the right direction?
We are, but we have to do much more. I would encourage everyone, just rethink what you do on a daily basis. What are you using, and why do you use it, and when do you dispose it? When do you call it waste? We only have waste because we label it as waste. Yeah. We decided it's waste. Even if you buy your clothes at Mutumba, which I happily do when there's no COVID, it has been declared waste for someone else on the other side of the world. But I call it my new wardrobe. So we decide when things are waste. So rethink materials and think differently, and go on a plastic diet. I think we also will realize plastic is a funny material. It's very clever material and it's very useful. But we need to understand when do we really use it, and it has improved our life. For instance, in the hospitals, you know, those we are much more able to have hygienic standards and do better on health with use of plastic. So we won't be completely plastic free, but we really need to think about it, because we have plastic particles in our environment. We have them in the water, we drink them, they are in our food. And actually they discovered, and they're still doing research, that plastic particles are in the air. And if a COVID-19 can stick to a surface, then you imagine that it can stick, or the next virus sticks to plastic particles in the air we can't see. This is what we are doing. This is us. This is our impact. It's our choice. So I really think, let's rethink, go on a plastic diet, apply reuse models where you can, create different things, and change your mind, change the way you think about material use. So if we can do that for this month and go on a plastic diet, that will be good.
All right, so someone here is watching and asking, what other alternatives do we have to plastic? I mean, we all know that recycling is one key route that we can take to ban this, but you know, we are so fond of plastic. So when you tell me do not use that plastic bag, what other alternative are you giving me? Interesting.
Yeah, so you have alternatives. If you look at a plastic toothbrush, people are starting making bamboo toothbrushes. So we can replace it with different materials. A cotton bud to clear your ears is not necessarily, has to be a plastic handle. Balloons, you can come up with different decoration that is not plastic. We can create really cool things out of textiles. So there are many alternatives. I think also not only recycling, because you keep on having, it's a very good question, because if you keep on having the single-use mentality, because now you recycle it, we still use actually more than we need. We really need to rethink. So reuse models are very good. It would be great if you can have a coffee on the way and you just bring your refillable coffee cup, and you get you get a discount on your coffee because you're not using a material they otherwise have to buy. Yeah. So those kind of alternatives we're looking at, because we can, and then it's actually becoming fun. To see how you can do that best. And also in the tourist industry, if you can give a really nice branded refillable water bottle, that's an investment, but it's also a memory for tourists when they go home, and they will keep on reusing it and putting it on their table and being proud that they've been to Kenya. And then it's a reason to tell what kind of experience you had here and to share more about our country.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I think on that very note, we're going to wind it there, unless there's something else that you'd want to tell us that would probably be of importance.
No, I would say let's really rethink how we live and how we have managed plastics up till now. I think we can live with a lot without it, because like 60 years ago, again, everyone was living without plastics. So we won't get rid of it completely. It's sometimes very useful. And for the reasons that it's not really useful, please replace, rethink, and be innovative.
All right, thank you so much, Karin Boomsma, Director Sustainable Inclusive Business. Of course, working alongside KEPSA. It was great having you this morning, and we all look forward to that time where we'll be successful on this battle that we've put aboard. Indeed, our environment is key, and we are the only people who are tasked to protect it. So thank you so much once again. It is now time that we cross over to a different segment altogether, Matters Entertainment, and the DJ is on standby to ensure